chilling tales for dark nights.
The following performance is a third-round entry in the 2018 Evil Idol voice acting competition, in which you, the listener, get to help decide who wins. I'm Jonathan West, winner of the 2017 Evil Idol competition, and I'll be your host as all of us help decide who will be crowned the next monarch of the macabre. Voting is easy. If you'd like to see tonight's featured contestant move on, simply log into your YouTube account and click the thumbs up icon if you'd like to see the contestant move on. Or give them a thumbs down if you'd rather they not. Voting on this entry will last for 1 week only, so don't delay. Want to spread the word about Evil Idol and tonight's contestant? Share this video on social media and include the hashtag EvilIdol2018. For myself and the creative team behind Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, good luck to all of our contestants, and thank you, listener, for helping us to coronate this year's Tyrant of Terror. Please welcome to round 3 of this year's competition, contestant number 18, Jesse, the voice of insanity, Brown, performing a self-authored tale. Submitted for your approval, we present to you Noise Complaint.
Thomas's eyes shot open. The low, thundering booms of rap music filled his ears. He rolled onto his side and stared at the orange numbers that floated in the darkness. 9:06. Doesn't this guy ever sleep? Thomas kicked off the covers and pulled himself out of bed. As he walked down the hall, the muted sounds of a party became subtly sharper. He approached the living room wall that he shared with his neighbor and stared at it with malicious intent. Doesn't he realize that I need to sleep? His eyes remained fixed on the ivory white drywall for several minutes. When he'd finally had enough, he threw on his robe and stormed out the door. The short walk down the hall was plenty of time to come up with what he wanted to say. Within moments, he was pounding on the door. When a full minute had passed by without so much as a hello, he began banging once more. The side of Thomas's fist started to hurt as he pounded the door continuously, but he would not stop until he was heard. Just when he thought he would wear a hole in the door, it suddenly swung open. Can I help you, bro? Thomas had plenty to say and opened his mouth to do so. But before he could utter a single syllable, his gaze was drawn to the unbelievable sight just beyond the doorway. Thomas recounted to be sure his eyes weren't deceiving him. But he had been right the first time. This apartment had 4 people in it. What's your deal, man? Thomas was roused from his stunned silence. My deal, Chad, is that you're throwing a huge party in the middle of the night. I'm trying to get some sleep. Party? Are you serious? It's like not even 9:30 and I'm playing Monopoly with some friends. I don't care what games you're playing, Chad. You and your hoodlum friends keep it down, or I'm calling the police. Chad rolled his eyes. Whatever, dude. Dude? Before Thomas could respond, the door was swiftly slammed shut. Insufferable prick. How a thick-headed oaf like Chad was a college student was beyond Thomas's understanding. Then again, judging by his habits and company, he wasn't there to get an education. As he opened his door, Thomas heard a strange sound further up the hall. It was like a heavy footfall on an icy, slush-covered ground. He froze and scanned the narrow burgundy hallway. Nothing. Thomas shrugged. As long as it stayed quiet, he didn't care what had made the sound. He locked the door and hung up his robe. Chad's music was still far too loud, but it would suffice. As he laid in bed and closed his eyes, Thomas tuned out the noisy world and allowed tranquil silence to lull him to sleep. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the dusty blinds. Thomas rubbed his eyes and slowly rolled out of bed. His morning was as routine as ever. He showered, got dressed, and ate a simple breakfast paired with a steaming cup of coffee. The morning was his absolute favorite part of the day. He lived alone because he preferred the isolation, but there was a unique serenity that came with being the only cognizant person in the building. As he set his computer to begin the day's work, a continuous thudding came from above him. It was that damned child again. His jaw tightened. He had made several complaints about the noise above him, but that wretched woman refused to tame that boy. Management had informed him repeatedly that her son was only 2, and that a single mother could only do so much. But that was a lie. He knew the truth. It was obvious that she didn't care and held no respect for the people around her. He put his headphones on and played a crackling fireplace on loop. He would write another email later. As noon approached, Thomas readied himself to take off his headphones. He closed his eyes and slid them off his ears. Silence. Perhaps his lunch would proceed better than his morning had. He had risen from his chair and was on his way to the bathroom when he heard a faint sound. However, this was a sound he was not accustomed to. Thomas had a special mental note for each type of disturbance that was brought on by his noisy neighbors. But this sound was different. This sound was new. There it was again. A faint scuffling sound. It was coming from the floor. At first, he thought the idea mad, but when it returned, he was certain. The faint yet increasingly annoying sound emanated from beneath his floorboards. Thomas felt his rage intensify. Not only were his neighbors unbearable, but now there were rats in the floor. He hovered his foot over the origin for a moment before he repeatedly stomped on the floor. When he stopped, he stood motionless and listened intently. Silent, as it should be. Later that afternoon, Thomas received an email notification. Having felt quite productive on this particular day, he felt he could spare a moment to read it. The subject line simply read, "Noise complaint." At last, perhaps management was finally going to do something about the disquiet in his building. He opened it, and his brow furrowed at its contents. "Dear Mr. Giles, we are contacting you today to inform you that we have received a noise complaint from another resident of your building. As this is the first complaint we have received, this email serves as merely a courtesy reminder. We ask that all residents respect the other occupants of their building so that all can better enjoy their home. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. Pinewood Apartments." A noise complaint? About him? This had to be some kind of joke. Surely they hadn't received a real complaint. It must have been one of his neighbors trying to spite him. Thomas didn't even bother responding to the email before promptly sending it to the trash. Feeling unamused by someone's poor humor, Thomas returned to work. When the day was over and he was preparing for bed, the scuffling returned. He stomped on the floor once more to quiet it. He would be sure to send an email in the morning. In the passing hours of the night, Thomas slept fitfully. Deafening wails haunted his dreams. At times, the blurring cacophony would rouse him in a cold sweat, and he was plunged back into the empty silence of the night. But like all nights that came before, it ended. When the dawn's early light finally appeared, Thomas did not feel the same joy the early hours normally brought, but he embraced it all the same. Going about his daily routine, he now found the scuffling in his bathroom floor as well. He slammed his foot down on the tiles a few times before stepping into the shower. Was this too now to become part of his routine? He shook his head and switched on the water. Once again, as the afternoon arrived, an email appeared in his inbox. Noise complaint. Dear Mr. Giles, we would like to inform you that we have received a second noise complaint against you. The resident below you has informed us of 2 more incidents of stomping. This is a formal warning. We ask that you monitor your noise levels as to not disturb other residents. Thank you for your cooperation. Pinewood Apartments. Thomas prepared to write a well-worded response of irritation, when suddenly he stopped. Something that had previously slipped his perception caught his eye and forced him to reread. The resident below? He snorted and moved this email to the trash as well. It was now clear that the management was also a conspirator in this little joke. He nearly laughed at it. Thomas lived on 421 Walker Street, in apartment 12A, on the first floor, and there was certainly no resident below him. Much like his mornings, Thomas's evenings were routine. A routine that was now interrupted by an unwelcome and increasingly frequent guest. The scuffling sound. As he passed by the kitchen, he heard the noise yet again. As before, he stomped several times to dispel the critter. After being satisfied by the silence, he went to continue his day. That's when he felt it. It was subtle at first, but as the moments passed, it became stronger. He pounded his foot down once more to be sure. Minutes passed by and sweat slowly formed on his forehead. When he thought he had finally convinced himself that it was merely his imagination, it returned. A slow, steady thump came from below his foot. He slammed the floor 3 more times. 3 hollow knocks returned from below him. The words from the email flashed in his mind. The resident below. This was absurd. There was no resident below him. Thomas lived on the first floor. It simply wasn't possible. And yet an irrational dread began to fill him. No, he would not allow his mind to play tricks on him. He was overworked. It was as simple as that. He just needed to splash some water on his face, lie down, and put his mind at ease. Heading for the bathroom, he ensured that his feet fell as hard as they could, determined to drive away this illusion, and the rats he was convinced lived in his floor. But with every stride, the floor imitated him mockingly. He didn't need to go to the bathroom. He didn't need to splash his face. He only needed to lie down. As he neared the bathroom, he quickly veered left and headed for the bedroom. The knocking changed course to pursue. As the desperation in him grew, so too did the length of his hallway. What was once an infinitesimal stroll now suddenly seemed to be an ever-growing trek to a distant location. He didn't need to go to the bedroom. He didn't need to lie down. He needed to get back to work. Turning around once again, Thomas made for his desk. And like a hungry predator stalking its prey, so too did the knocking. Music. He needed music. On his way to his desk, Thomas switched on the stereo and turned the volume up to 16. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony poured from the speakers. Yes, surely this would drive those pesky rats away. As he sat at his desk, he closed his eyes and attempted to clear his mind. Everything would be fine if he just went back to his routine. He opened his eyes and his heart ran cold. Another email was waiting for him. With a sweat-drenched hand, he moved his mouse and opened the message. Noise complaint. We warned you. The resident below you is very unhappy. As Thomas stared at the single line of text, the lone knocking on the floor split into 2. Then it split again, and again, and again. Thomas sat in frozen terror as the knocking consumed him like an overpowering current of the sea. As the orchestra reached its crescendo, the floor vibrated with the crashing thud of 1,000 knocks. Books fell from their shelves and paint slowly peeled from the walls. The illusions of tranquility and peace collapsed all around him, and just when he thought his sanity was the next to fall, there was silence. No knocks, no Beethoven, no anything. It was the most perfect and absolute silence he had ever heard in his life. And it was wonderful. Thomas looked down at the bloodied fountain pen in his hand. It was a shame that he had to ruin his favorite pen, but it was a small price to pay for peace. With a newfound calmness, Thomas returned to his desk and resumed the day's work. He relished in this newfound stillness. No longer would he have to deal with Chad's tasteless music. No longer would he be interrupted by the tantrums of a child. No longer would he have to stomp at the rats on the floor. No longer would he have to answer the pounding at the door.
Thanks for listening. I'm Jonathan West, reminding you, if you haven't already, to cast your vote for this contestant via either a thumbs up or thumbs down. Voting is easy. Simply log into your YouTube account and click the thumbs up icon if you'd like to see the contestant move on. Or give him a thumbs down if you'd rather they not. Want to spread the word about Evil Idol and tonight's contestant? Don't forget to spread the word by sharing tonight's entry on social media and include the hashtag EvilIdol2018. You've been listening to Chilling Tales for Dark Nights in the 2018 Evil Idol voice acting competition. I'm your host, 2017 winner Jonathan West, inviting you to return every weekday for a new entry from our amazing contestants. Until then, turn off the lights and turn on the dark.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.